A morning after a wedding filled with anxiety, tea, and revelations that could change everything. Can Sophie open her heart to the one who knows her best? Or will the fear of losing their friendship outweigh the pull of love? Vapor curling from the copper kettle, golden morning light filtering through the gaps in my lavender patterned curtains. My sage colored tea timer resting beside a small potted succulent on the granite countertop, an empty bottle of locally brewed cider standing next to it, and the intricate herringbone pattern adorning my charcoal woolen socks. 5 things I can see. Standing in my quaint kitchen with eyes still heavy from sleep and mind foggy with lingering dreams, I sweep a cascade of unruly auburn curls away from my face, press my elbow against the cool granite counter that my sister Olivia had insisted I splurge on during my apartment renovation last year, run my fingertips along the soft plaid flannel of my oversized pajama shirt, a hand-me-down from my father, and finally tap my foot against the speckled terrazzo floor that reminds me of starry nights. That's 4 things I can touch. Ethan makes his way into the kitchen behind me, his footsteps as gentle as falling leaves. The deep, comforting rumble of water rising to a boil transitions to a high-pitched whistle, followed by the delicate sound of 2 glasses being carefully placed in the porcelain sinks. These familiar sounds send both my mind and body into a slow, simmering state of their own. 3 things I can hear. My elderly neighbor, Mrs. Kapoor, starts playing her classical violin upstairs. The 4th sound, a beautiful but melancholy melody that seems to perfectly capture my current emotional state. Ethan stands beside me, close enough that I can feel the warmth radiating from him, as he reaches above my head to pull down 2 handcrafted ceramic mugs, gifts from his mother's pottery studio, from my aging wooden cabinet with its characteristic creak. I don't turn to look at him, still working through the anxiety spiral that gripped me after last night's events, but I don't need to search far for 2 things I can smell. His distinctive scent of cedar and peppermint envelops me as he places the mugs on the counter, a scent I've come to associate with comfort and home over the years of our friendship. He crosses the small kitchen toward the cupboard where I keep my extensive collection of teas, organized by type and flavor intensity, a system he's always teased me about, though he respects it nonetheless. "What number are you on?" he asks, his voice carrying a tenderness that reflects our decade of friendship. The fact that he knows me well enough to recognize I'm using my therapist's recommended grounding technique brings my anxiety down another level. There's still one of my senses left to identify in this exercise. I touch my fingertips to my lips, where I can still taste the sweet, honeyed impression of his kiss from last night. A kiss that had simultaneously fulfilled and complicated years of unspoken longing. "Almost done," I say softly. 5 slow, deliberate breaths in and out, just as Dr. Winters had taught me, and I'm at least stable enough to turn and face him now. I slowly pivot as he shuffles back into my personal space, the space that had always been open to him, yet never quite like this. "Are you wearing my robe?" I ask, noticing the pale blue cotton wrapped around his tall frame. He leans against the counter next to me, his normally meticulously styled dark hair now charmingly disheveled, his hazel eyes warm and dreamy. The morning light catches on the gold flecks in his irises, something I've always secretly admired but tried not to fixate on. "It's so cozy, Sophie," he says, using my full name instead of the Soph nickname he usually defaults to. Despite the smoldering sensation of uncertainty brewing in my chest, I can't help but grin as I nod my head. "I'm aware," I reply, trying to maintain some semblance of normalcy between us. "So are your slippers," he adds, around a yawn that he doesn't bother to cover, rubbing his right foot playfully against my left. I glance down at my pastel blue slippers adorned with tiny embroidered daisies, a birthday gift from my younger sister Maya, who always insists I need more whimsical joy in my life. "I thought those looked familiar," I say with a small laugh, "though they're definitely too small for you." "Fashion over function," he quips with a wink that sends a flutter through my chest. He dangles a tea bag in front of my nose, and I reach up to take it from him. It's our unspoken ritual. I always smell my tea before placing it in my cup, a habit I picked up from my grandmother, who insisted it was the proper way to appreciate tea. His hand lingers on mine, and I tense at the contact, fighting the urge to lean into him completely. He gently squeezes my fingers before letting go, a gesture that could mean everything or nothing at all. On a shaky inhale, I sniff the tea leaves, and the soothing aroma of chamomile settles all the way into the center of my chest, providing a momentary anchor. Outside my kitchen window, a chorus of sparrows and robins fills the morning air, their cheerful song contrasting with the heaviness in my heart. Through the glass, I can see old Mr. Fleming walking his corgi, Biscuit, along the tree-lined street, following the same route they've taken every morning for the past 5 years. The routine of others continues while my world feels tilted on its axis. Ethan places his winter rooibos tea, his favorite since our college days, in his mug, and I busy myself pouring water over both tea bags to let them steep. My hands tremble slightly, betraying my outward calm. It's all so achingly familiar, yet completely different, transformed by the unspoken tension that inevitably comes from kissing your best friend the night before after a decade of carefully maintained boundaries. For Ethan's part, he appears as mellow as ever. The picture of contentment standing here in my kitchen, wearing my robe and slippers, drinking my tea, and unknowingly holding my heart in his hands. His tall frame leans casually against the counter, his posture relaxed in a way mine can't manage to be right now. "So," he begins, his voice deliberately light, "are we going to talk about last night?" The question hangs in the air between us, heavy with possibilities. "Nope," I say, far too quickly. I stare intently at the steam drifting up and away from my mug, watching the wisps curl and dissipate into nothing, much like I fear our friendship might. I reach for my tea timer, a small ceramic owl with wide, knowing eyes, setting it for 7 minutes precisely. He gently bumps his arm against my shoulder, the casual touch feeling like electricity. "Come on, Sophie," he coaxes. I shiver at the contact, feeling off balance and vulnerable. I don't think I could perform my grounding exercises again right now, even if I wanted to. My senses are all officially overwhelmed by Ethan's presence, boiled down to one confusing, nameless emotion that threatens to consume me entirely. "Hey, you're cold," he says with concern, already untying the belt of my robe and pulling it off his broad shoulders that I've spent years trying not to notice or admire. I'm not actually cold, the May morning is quite mild, but I don't stop him from slipping the soft cotton snugly around me and carefully tying the belt into a tiny bow at my waist, his fingers brushing against me with deliberate gentleness. This is the effect Ethan has always had on me. All 10 years of our friendship, from our first meeting in Professor Jenkins' Literature of the Absurd class, through my graduate studies and his career changes, through his 3 serious relationships and my string of failed dates, have been a fever dream of yearning for moments like this, then freezing when they actually happen. Because I know that for him, it's all just part of his naturally affectionate personality. I've existed as his best friend, his confidant, his +1 to weddings and work functions, all this time, and it was manageable when I didn't know exactly what it was like to be fully engulfed by him, like I was last night on my couch. "Better?" he asks, his voice dropping to a tone that makes my stomach flip. Better isn't remotely the word I'd use. It's borderline unbearable to feel so much at once like this, to be both elated and terrified in equal measure. "Mm-hmm," I mumble non-committally, fussing with my tea bag just so I have something to do with my hands that doesn't involve reaching for him. He's facing me directly now, while my gaze remains fixed on my woolen socks pressed up against the edges of the slippers he's wearing. They must be at least 2 sizes too small on him, making his feet look comically large. With gentle determination, he tips my face up, forcing me to meet his eyes. "Why can't we talk about it?" he asks, and there's an undercurrent of hurt in his voice that I rarely hear. "Why not?" Because I have only dared to long for this to happen for years, fantasizing about it during lonely nights, and immediately shutting down those thoughts come morning. And now that it has happened, I don't know what to do with the reality of it. Somewhere between the two of us returning to my place after his sister Lily's wedding last night, to splitting the last of the artisanal cider left in my fridge while sitting on my worn but comfortable couch, laughing about how his impromptu joke fell flat during his best man's speech, my punch-drunk brain decided one kiss would finally set me free from this constant ache to be closer to him. Except once he pulled me into his lap, his strong hands warm against my waist, and our lips pressed together, all I wanted was more of his touch, more of his warmth, more of everything that was Ethan. It took every ounce of willpower I possessed to stop it from going further once my rational brain finally caught up with my runaway heart. I'd abruptly pulled away, mumbled something incoherent about it being late, and fled to my bedroom, leaving him confused and alone on my couch. Because that was part of the deal. Remember? I say, trying to make my voice sound light and unconcerned. I was your fake date to the wedding. We were pretending for one night. Now it's a new day. All night during the wedding reception, we joked about fake dating and glass slippers in his electric car turning into a pumpkin at midnight. When he pulled me close on the dance floor, spinning me under the twinkling lights of Lily's garden wedding, I was dizzy with happiness. Later on my couch, when he pulled me close again, I was giddy with possibility. We're still on a fake date until midnight, I'd whispered teasingly. In response, he'd brushed a strand of hair from my face and told me in a hushed tone that he'd wanted to kiss me all night. So, there's nothing to talk about, he persists, his eyes searching mine. Not even how you panicked and left me alone on your couch after we kissed? At each methodical tick of the owl tea timer, my brain supplies another reason why I'm terrified to have this conversation. What I'm most afraid to hear him say rings clearly in my mind. It was a mistake. It won't change things between us. It didn't mean anything. We can just go back to being friends. It was just the wedding atmosphere making me sentimental. 10 years of carefully avoiding this exact scenario, and I screw it all up in one champagne and cider-fueled night. Please, Sophie, say something, he urges, breaking through my spiral of anxious thoughts. There's an unsteadiness to his voice that I'm not accustomed to hearing from Ethan, who's usually so confident and self-assured in everything he does. When I dare to meet his eyes again, they're darker than their usual golden-flecked hazel, more like forest shadows, smoldering. His cheeks are flushed pink, and there's a tension in his jaw that wasn't there before. His hand taps an irregular rhythm against the counter, betraying his nerves. There's something almost desperate about him right now, all his usual easy charm replaced by anxious energy. My phone buzzes with a text from Maya, likely asking for details about the wedding, but I ignore it. This moment feels too important to interrupt. For all the times Ethan has been steadfastly by my side through anxiety attacks and panic episodes, through breakups and job rejections, through my parents' divorce and the loss of my beloved grandmother, he deserves the same unwavering support from me. For the first time since last night, I'm struck by the realization that I'm not the only one who stands to lose something precious here. I'm terrified of what he might say, but the kiss was mutual, and it's not fair of me to withdraw just to spare my own feelings at the expense of his, whatever they may be. He taps my forehead 3 times with his index finger, a gesture he's used since college whenever he thinks I'm overthinking something. The delicate touch sets off a cascade of warmth that travels from my head to my toes. Please tell me what's brewing up here, he asks, his voice gentle but insistent. Sometimes I think it can't just be me, like we've been teetering on some sort of simmering precipice almost as long as we've known each other. Our friends have joked about it for years. Jessica and Marco even had a running bet about when we'd finally get our acts together, as they put it. That might actually be what scares me the most, the idea that it could all change irrevocably, that in the process of our relationship evolving into something new, it falls apart instead, leaving me without the one person who knows me better than I know myself. I need to let him put me out of my misery and figure out how to go back to being just friends, how to forget what it feels like to have all of me pressed up against all of him on the couch, his heartbeat strong and steady under my palm. I intend to say this to him, the part about being friends. I inhale deeply and practice it in my head, the words forming a protective barrier around my heart. Then, inexplicably, a completely different set of words pour out of my mouth entirely. What did you mean in your speech at the wedding? It wasn't what you practiced with me. For someone who spends so much of her time overthinking every single social interaction, I share can be impulsive when it comes to Ethan. We'd laughed about it last night, how he'd gone completely off script from the speech he'd been practicing diligently all week. Instead of the carefully crafted anecdotes about Lily and her new husband Quinn's courtship, he'd named all the subtle moments he could tell his sister was in love with Quinn before she finally admitted it to herself. Then he'd tried to finish with a clever joke about love and marriage, but completely botched the punchline and ended up just finishing the speech with a simple toast to falling, an awkward moment that had Lily rolling her eyes affectionately at her brother. He scratches at the back of his neck, a nervous habit he's had since I've known him, and backs up slightly. This time it's him who is creating space between us, and the reversal isn't lost on me. Not impressed with my improv skill, he says, his voice slightly strangled. It's strange and somewhat disorienting to see Ethan, who is usually my emotional rock, faltering under my gaze for once. It makes me feel curiously braver. If you regret the kiss, please just tell me, I say, my voice steadier than I feel inside. We can go back to the way things were, pretend it never happened, whatever you want. I just need to know where we stand. His eyes darken further, stormy now, like Earl Grey tea steeping too long, and my heartbeat thunders in my throat. I don't, he says simply. My chest feels like it's splitting in two, and a hot tear springs unbidden from my eye, trailing down my cheek. Him not wanting to be friends anymore is exactly why I was so afraid of this moment. I understand, I say resignedly, wiping away the tear with the back of my hand. I never should have kissed you, knowing I was the only one with feelings. It doesn't have to ruin our friendship, though, Ethan. We can move past this. Confusion passes over his features, his expressive face always so easy for me to read. 5 things I can see in this moment of vulnerability. His forehead wrinkles in puzzlement. His eyes soften again, warm and bright like green tea on a summer day. The smattering of freckles across the bridge of his nose that become more pronounced in spring. The tiny scar on his chin from when he fell off his bike at age 12. His usually pale cheeks now flushed with emotion. Some sort of understanding seems to settle over him, his features relaxing into a look of tender realization. He's figuring out I'm in love with him, I think, with a sinking heart. And even in my worst nightmares about him rejecting me, it never felt this tragically inevitable. His warm hand closes over mine on the counter, and I brace myself for the gentle letdown that I'm sure is coming. That's where you're wrong, Sophie, he says softly. My lips quiver slightly, and I struggle to maintain my composure. You don't want to stay friends? I ask, voice barely above a whisper. He shakes his head ruefully, his thumb brushing over my knuckles in a soothing rhythm, and takes a deep inhale of his own. Remember that time we were at Moonlight Diner and the server accidentally spilled orange juice all over my lap, and you laughed so hard that you knocked your iced tea over on yourself? I stare at him, feeling disoriented by the seemingly random memory from years ago. What does that have to do with anything, I ask? And what about the night that woman from the dating app stood me up? And you met me at the Rusty Nail and we ended up singing karaoke until 2 a.m. He continues as if I hadn't spoken. A surprised laugh escapes me, even though I'm still wildly confused by where he's going with this. You told the Lyft driver you were Prince reincarnated on the way home, I recall, the memory bringing a smile despite my emotional turmoil. He grins, looking more like himself again. And yesterday, when I picked you up to drive to the ceremony, and the second you saw me in my suit, you threw your arms around me and whispered, "Hey there, fake date," into my ear. My skin prickles with awareness, the memory of yesterday's butterflies, returning in full force. I don't understand, I say honestly. Our friendship really is perfect as is, Ethan. We don't need to. He shakes his head, interrupting me. Nah, Sophie, I went off script during my speech because all I could think about the whole night was every moment over the past 10 years where I was falling in love with you. My mind was filled with memories of us, laughing until we cried over terrible movies. You falling asleep on my shoulder during our weekend road trips. The way you always saved the last bite of dessert for me. How you remembered my mom's birthday when I forgot and rushed out to buy her favorite flowers. He pauses, his eyes locked with mine. I don't regret the kiss, not for a second. You're not the only one with feelings here. Tears are cascading freely down my cheeks now, and I don't bother to wipe them away. And you just realized it last night during our fake date? I ask, afraid to hope that what I'm hearing is real. He pulls me closer until there's barely any space between us, and I nestle into him until I'm flush against his chest, inhaling the comforting scent that is uniquely Ethan. I've known it for a long, long time, he murmurs into my hair, his breath warm against my scalp. Why didn't you just tell me? I ask, my voice muffled against his chest. He laughs softly and brushes a gentle kiss to my forehead that sends tingles down my spine. You're not the only one who's allowed to be scared, you know. I was terrified of losing you. You're my best friend, Sophie, the most important person in my life. Relief stirs in my chest, then spreads outward like ripples in a pond. I get to keep the pieces of Ethan I already loved and collect new ones. It's not over. It's just beginning. Happiness pulls to the surface and bubbles up, making me feel almost giddy with possibility. Well, I have been in love with you longer, I can't help but declare. The whole time, basically. He grins broadly, this smile that has always made my heart skip a beat. Your competitive streak. It's on my list of things I love about you, he says with a chuckle. I'm stunned, but not completely surprised. The fear that he might feel the same way was always present, just overshadowed by the louder fear that he wouldn't. Did you know I felt the same? The whole time? I ask, suddenly curious about all the moments I thought I was hiding my feelings so well. His hand traces a soothing path up and down my arm, leaving goosebumps in its wake. I had my suspicions, he admits, especially after that night at Olivia's New Year's party when you got tipsy on champagne and couldn't stop staring at me, but I always knew I had to wait for the right time. I know how hard change is for you, Sophie, how your brain needs time to process and accept something new. A fact my therapist reminds me of frequently, I interject with a small smile. Last night it felt like you were finally ready, he continues. I never wanted you to feel rushed or pressured. Having you in my life as a friend was enough. But I've always wanted more, Sophie. I've been in love with you almost as long as you have with me. Almost, I repeat with a teasing smile, leaning back slightly to look into his eyes. He brushes my wild curls away from my face, cradling my cheeks in his warm hands. When we kiss again, he says, his voice dropping to a whisper, you're not going to try to hide from me, are you? I slip my arms around his waist, feeling braver than I have in years. No, I say with newfound confidence. I may, in fact, spontaneously combust if I don't get closer to him right this second, considering how long this feeling has been brewing between us. The owl tea timer chimes cheerfully behind us, breaking the moment with its insistent hooting. Tea is ready, he says, but makes no move to release me. From outside the window, I hear Mrs. Kapoor's violin reach a crescendo, and somewhere in the building, a door closes. The world continues to turn, but everything has changed. I smile up at him, and warmth fills me to the brim, spilling over like a perfectly steeped cup of tea. So am I whisper. As he leans down to kiss me again, I hear the familiar sound of keys in the front door. My roommate Rebecca returning from her overnight shift at the hospital. She'll be surprised to find Ethan here so early in the morning, but something tells me she won't be surprised at all to find us together like this at last. The morning sunlight streams through the curtains, casting a golden glow over everything, the beginning of a new day, and something much more precious, the beginning of us. If you like this incredible story, please like and subscribe to the channel to see even more of it.